All right. I'm Eric Coffee, your host of Govcon Giants podcast. I'm here with Ben Amaba, who's going to talk about China's worst fear today, right? And Ben is one of the speakers at our conference coming up on November the 14th and 15th. And Ben, I want to have a conversation to talk about some of the issues that you've been bringing up and why you think this is important for the American people to know, and also why you think it's important for all the engineers around the country to know what's happening out here. So, can you just first of all introduce yourself and then tell us kind of what your role is in all of this?
Sure. My name is Ben Amaba. For the past 30 years, I've been dealing with emerging technology, designing it, implementing it, and even decommissioning it at the appropriate time. As we look at the emergence of technology, there's always the good side of technology, but there's also a nefarious side of technology, people that use that technology not in the best interests of the public. And as a licensed professional engineer, you've taken this oath to protect the public's health, safety, security, as well as their welfare and their environment. And because emerging technology has become a main motivator for companies, people, institutions to transform themselves, they need to understand both the process, the benefits, and the disadvantages. And some of those disadvantages are starting to outweigh the benefits that we've been able to, elaborate or exploit regarding technology. And
Now,
this, oh,
okay, no, I'm sorry.
yeah, and
Um,
why it's so important for us to get together. You'll notice that the best technology takes an effort of collaboration, interdisciplinary, integrated communication.
what were some of your past jobs? Because people don't know who you are. For those, kind of where did you work at before, and what did you do?
Sure. My past jobs, the majority of my career was with IBM in several divisions, from hardware, software, and to services. Eventually, I retired as the chief technology officer, where we were looking at emerging technologies and safety critical systems. I've had an opportunity to work with startups and mid-sized firms, both on artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. And I continue to be a mentor to many of these firms out there, small, medium, and even large institutions.
And for those who, I'm sure everyone's heard the IBM name, but what does IBM do primarily? I mean, a lot of people know IBM, but they don't know what they do exactly.
IBM has been in the technology world, and it, of course, stands for International Business Machines. It's interesting because they looked at the business, the institution, and the individual. And the machines part is technology. What could they scale internationally to bring those outcomes or benefit to society? And when they talk about technology, it's generally in 3 to 4 areas, depending on the way you look at it. It's the evolution of hardware, of course, Moore's law, the evolution of software, things where software is connected, and the people behind that, the people in process. So they generally combine those three elements, and of course, the economic benefits if some people look at the fourth element to provide solutions to some of the most challenging problems.
So tell us, right, what are some of those challenging problems that we're talking about today? Because clearly, I got a chance to know you this year and learn about what you're doing, and you're working a lot of initiatives with a lot of important people. And I'm trying to figure out why would you have calls with dozens and dozens of people from the largest companies out here in the world? What are you guys trying to solve for? What is some of the issues that people should be concerned about?
Yeah, the big question right now today, as we look at the market, are two major technologies: artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Everybody is almost forced to use some kind of artificial intelligence, not knowing full well maybe the impacts, the drivers, or the outcomes, negative or positive. The second part of that coin is because of that elusiveness or not understanding that technology, it opens up doors that for nefarious people or people with malintent generally try to explore. So, in the pioneering or in the investigation of these emerging technologies, both the hardware, GPUs, and artificial intelligence, the software, sometimes it opens Pandora's box. It could be vulnerabilities, right? Not intentional. It could be malware. But what we definitely see in these three areas is three general areas, especially in responsibility: either incompetence, misconduct, or maybe negligence in general. And that's what we're trying to avoid in trying to harvest the benefits. You want to stay away from, again, those three factors: negligence, misconduct, and incompetence. So I'm out there to educate, and at least if we can at least suppress those or minimize those, it brings better benefits to society.
Now, one of the things that we featured last year, there's a report that came out, and it says this feature report that China has built the foundation to position itself as the world's leader in science and technology superpower. They're leading the tech race, 37 out of 44 technologies, including like space, robotics, energy, environment, biotech, AI, advanced materials, and key quantum technology areas. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that there is starting to be a loss in equilibrium, especially since at times they may be using it for specific society and isolating, as we've seen in history, from other societies and organizations, and maybe using it from an offensive perspective, not just a defensive perspective, using it for their benefit rather than the global benefit. Because from a geographical welfare, there really isn't any physical boundaries. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing: a better life and moving society forward. So if put in the wrong hands or done for the wrong intent, or not knowing the true intent, it could be dangerous to society as a whole, not just a specific country, but society as a whole.
Okay. Now tell us more specifically, right? You mentioned to me about the 16 critical infrastructures. Tell us about that and what does that mean?
The 16 critical infrastructures is we're very reliant on our well-being, whether it's agriculture, water, energy. We're very reliant on it. And even in certain hurricanes or an outage such as CrowdStrike, it doesn't bring certain minimum standards of care to individuals. And right now, the 16 critical infrastructures, because of legacy systems, are the most at risk today. Taking a water supply out of a community could be disastrous, not only from the health and well-being, but it stops the economy. Same with energy, transportation, and the other infrastructure we've been talking about. So it's a very dangerous area to be playing on, not just to take it out, but to lose that equilibrium, right? Where there's energy, there's water; where there's transportation, there's education and agriculture. So they're all adjacent industries that we rely on every day, if not every minute.
Nice. Nice. And so your particular group, what is it that you're trying to solve and what do you want people to know about? What is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, we're trying to accomplish three things, right? To prevent these disasters, vulnerabilities, to isolate them, and then, of course, remediation. Of course, we want on the front end the prevention and then isolation and remediation, right? Remediation in itself is 100 times more expensive than if you prevented it. Now, we see three areas to do those three disciplines. That's the ability to educate the public so they can recognize it. That's the ability to do research or continue to build that education, right? So we can prevent it. But more importantly, is to take that education and capabilities, create a minimum standard of care, and commercialize it so that others have access and have ability to execute. Because knowledge by itself, or tacit knowledge that I talk to, that it's within our thought process until it's turned into an asset that other people can leverage, like an automobile, a power plant, even a grocery store. It is very difficult for the general population to use. So I'm looking at three areas. Again, the education of not only a workforce, but the public, the ability to do basic research, but take that basic research to commercialization and application.
How can small businesses play a role in any of the things that you're doing?
The small business, which is a majority of the economy, make a huge difference, especially in the workforce, the innovation, and the commercialization, because there's such a large population in the community. They actually provide a majority of the content and connection and collaboration, which I call the three C's. Without those small to medium business, that innovation engine is lost. And it's like it's a community. If you look at some of the best think tanks around the world, whether it's Silicon Valley, the Boston Corridor, or even Istanbul, a majority of those companies that brought those innovations to the table were small to medium businesses. Not only do they have the feet in the ground, but they go beyond just the scope of what traditional large business or institutions look at, because they generally get in a groove and they have a tendency not to look outside their box, specifically the domain, the industry, or the geography. The no, the mobility of small to medium business allows us to go to the boundaries of innovation that most larger institutions are unable to do.
So how from a practical standpoint, I'm a small business and I'm coming to the conference and you're talking about innovation. I'm in the tech field. What can we talk to you about when we get there?
Yes, absolutely. One is economies of scale, right? Lessons learned across several people, the law of large numbers. It's going to be a lot less expensive to learn from others than to learn from yourself. That's what we see there. So there's that economic benefit, right? But alongside that, there is this workforce benefit by turning your people or leveraging resources from a variable cost versus a fixed cost. It's much more amenable and favorable for the small to medium business. So right off the bat, you'll see small businesses will benefit from two areas: the economic benefits, learning, and then the productivity benefits, meaning they're getting the economies of scale that they traditionally wouldn't get if they were by themselves or even just working with one large institution. Now you've got the power of several individuals that have been innovative, they're mobile, and you create a network of networks or an ecosystem of players, and you'll find that a majority of those players will be small to medium businesses.
Are there any specific types of companies that you're looking for to work with?
Yes, I'm looking for those that are in those 16 critical infrastructures,
Okay.
but doesn't prohibit, if you're outside those realm of 16 infrastructures, learning something. So, for example, a lot of rail companies actually learn procurement capabilities from the retail industry. You wouldn't think of that. A lot
Okay.
of the Department of Defense, they learn from warehousing, cross stocking, which they may not have seen in their own industry. So I think what you'll learn here is the ability to cross your boundaries of innovation by attending. And on top of that, you're going to be meeting some of the experts in their field. That's what they've studied for the past 20 or 30 years. So not only do they know the outcomes, they know the knobs to turn for small to medium business. A small to medium business doesn't have 15, 16, 100 dials to turn. They've got machines, materials, money, and a workforce. Those four variables are limited. So knowing, instead of 100 variables what to turn and how much, now you've got the benefit economies to scale. How much do I turn these knobs? Because again, as a small to medium business, I've got limited resources, I've got limited time, but I need to perform at a level of quality that competes with everybody else.
And the lineup of people that you selected to come in and participate with you, can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, in fact, I chose specific areas, both operational, tactical, and strategic. We all know we want that strategic view with artificial intelligence and leverage that over 3 years, maybe even less of that. But I've brought individuals that deal with the supply chain every day and every hour. So individuals like Thomas Beal with Perfect Planner, he's looking at every day, every hour in the supply chain. You've got Dr. Forte, who's looking at artificial intelligence, who's actually used the law of physics to bring that tactical component to you if you're breached from a software perspective. But then we've got strategic thinkers from MITRE and SIC that look at strategically, because they look at, if we can do it operationally and tactically, how does that fulfill us in the long term? So I've purposely brought people that can have immediate results as soon as you walk out that door, with a strategic vision so that it builds on it. So I think it's very important for small to medium businesses that immediate cash flow is king, but at the same time, let's keep the borders in place to finally get to the destination that our vision is painting for us. So that's very important to me, that you don't just walk away with theory, but you walk away with operational changes that'll bring money or profit to the bottom line.
And I'm sure a lot of us appreciate that because, right, like you said, we're limited on resources and we have to choose where we spend them carefully, right? So obviously, we like to hedge our bets, and if we can spend $1 and potentially get a 10x return, that's what we're looking for, as opposed to $1 and getting a 1x or a 2x return. So that's great to hear. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't know about you is that you've assembled this consortium of wonderful people from the top Fortune 100 companies. How did you do that? Like, what is your process of assembling such great talented minds? I know I've been on a couple of those calls with you. I've had the privilege and the luxury at the same time. But how were you able to assemble such great minds collectively to work on solving some of these areas that are critical to both defense and government?
Yeah, it's a really simple approach, and many of us heard us before. If we understand the why, how would we do that, and then what would we need to do that? In my world, it's I call it the boat theory, right? The boat is an acronym. If we understand the business for B, the organization for O, the algorithm or technology behind that, and then the technology, we will be able to sail on calm waters. What I see in a lot of instances or failure, especially with technology, almost 75% of technology fails with 80% off schedule and 46% off budget. If you jump into the back of the boat, the technology. What I profess here, and when I go to my consortium or constituents or peers, we kind of look at the vessel as an entire boat. Understand the business, understand the organization, the application and algorithm, and then understand the technology. You'll see some of the best successful projects, institutions, and individuals look at that and they frame it based on that. So when you come to some of these sessions, they're talking about your business, they're talking about your institution, they're talking about you as an individual. And if you keep everything level on the boat, you're going to be a lot more successful. And as we sail through some turbulent waters that we've seen in the economy today, both physical, political, economical, and social, I think by understanding this, not only are you going to understand why these people came together, you're going to be able to join that fleet of individuals that are becoming successes, not only overnight, but the long term.
Can you talk about, and I appreciate that, some of you mentioned some numbers about, can you talk about numbers as it applies to cybersecurity? Or do you have any data points that you can talk about in terms of how big is the
Yeah,
problem, right?
absolutely. Cybersecurity is the third largest industry. In fact, by 2025, it's going to be a $10 trillion industry. The only two economies ahead of the cybersecurity industry is the United States and China. So this cybersecurity industry is growing at leaps and bounds. Again, $10 trillion. Now, what's interesting about this, not only is it the third largest industry, especially with vulnerabilities and malware, it is growing at 742%. So it is in humankind, it's growing at rates that are phenomenal. Now, let's not only look at it from an aggregate or strategic area, let's look at it from an individual area. One breach for a company now is going to cost you within an hour about $5.2 million an hour. $5.2 million. And if 90% of this was avoidable, meaning understanding prevention, isolation, and remediation, we could be preventing this. And it's continuing to grow, right? Open source software that gave us a lot of this innovation is still going at a rapid rate. And we can't turn that around because open source software specifically created not only the benefits, but some of the downfalls of this. 90% of enterprise software right now is made of open source software, but it's also vulnerable. In fact, 94% of it could have been avoided. So I believe this area of just understanding the software bill of material, just like we did in our bill of material for hardware, we can actually prevent and mitigate some of the vulnerabilities that are occurring today. Again, I'm seeing specifically small to medium businesses running into both legal and insurance problems because now many insurance companies, especially if it's an international threat, they won't insure or underwrite. And more than likely, if you're small to medium business, you're going to be attacked for the second time because you don't have that underwriting. So that second time could literally be put you out of business. So why am I concerned about that? Because if that is our economy, one cyber attack and you can't get insurance because it was international, then that means these companies will be sunsetting or closing at a phenomenal rate that our economy can't support. And taking those rights away for individuals that have worked so hard to get where they are, I think we can do a better job. And I think it's a responsibility of licensed individuals that understand this to do something about it.
What do you think? How do you think it's affecting some of the cities and municipalities at those levels?
Oh, absolutely. We've already seen that, especially in the healthcare area. In 2023, in November, 2 emergency rooms were shut down. So it impacted individuals where they had to divert critical patients to other hospitals. That's a life or death situation. You think about water. Right now, 1/5 of the world's population has no access to clean water. If you increase that to 3/5 or even 4/5, the ability for us to operate will come to a standing stop, much less energy. You've seen from a lot of the reports from hurricane, just natural disasters, cutting out power and not being able to provide certain public services to individuals that need it is going to be a huge impact, especially if it's controlled and timed by nefarious individuals. You can have accumulation of disasters or 16 critical infrastructure failures, and that would put the country to our knees.
Wow. Do you think that people that are working at these municipalities and cities, some of the people that are managing these systems, will be the benefit of them coming to the event?
I think specifically them. I think they'll learn three things. They'll understand not what the threats are, but what their vulnerabilities are. I think that's the first one. The second thing they'll figure out is based on our community and what you'll learn from some of the experts is how to actually prevent, isolate, and mitigate these. So that's number two. But more importantly, the third one is I think we're going to be presenting assets that they don't have to know everything about everything. They're going to get the benefit of hundreds of years of experience that an asset where you can turn a knob, install a system, monitor that system, those dashboards, and give them visibility, transparency, explainability, and trust that they wouldn't traditionally get outside of this venue. I think you'll get all of that, specifically explainability. Why do I have to do this? How do I actually have to do this? And what do I have to put in place to actually perform at the level of safety, security, and welfare?
Wow. Thank you, Ben. Ben, listen, this is great. I appreciate it. And I know, as I've stated earlier, that there's not many people working on trying to solve these problems. It's a huge problem. And while the rest of the world is worried about their day-to-day activities, you guys are out there fighting the good fight. So we appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to hearing you speak at the event. Also, looking forward to us having those deeper conversations with industry and also government to talk about how we can come together and solve these issues that are affecting all of us. Or at one point, they will affect us all inevitably if we don't solve for them. So, Ben, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yep. And Eric, thank you again for putting this session together and bringing these people together. And like you said, it's not who it's going to affect and what, but it's when it's going to happen. It'll happen to all of us. We've seen this. Everybody's run into some challenge or situation as of today.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Eric.